So this is my first video. Just to explain what's going on, that I feel like I'm at the point, I feel like I'm at the point where I have exhausted myself from all the ambivalence I feel when it comes to being with men. And I severely put into question my motivations behind being with someone. And in my mind, it's always selfish. Now, is it total selfishness? Is it always being partly or total selfish? Is it something else? The specifics I don't know right now, but I do have this ongoing fear, and I guess this worrying belief that it is very possible, or I'm thinking like, what if I'm just being selfish and I'm using this person? And the way my mind takes it is that that is probably the case. Now, is it probably the case? Again, I don't know. I pray to God not, but anyway, it's just so tiring. Like, it is so emotionally, takes such an emotional tax. To sense that one might be hurting someone else. And I felt the Lord tell me through people that I should take a year or some time of not dating. Now, I've never been one to always be dating, but I had come out of a relationship on and off for 2 years. We were only official for 3 months, but we were acting together for more than that. So it's, my ex and I consider it that we were pretty much dating for 2 years. Yeah, it was it was hectic. I put him through a lot. And anyway, after that, we finished. And then about 2 months after we finished, about 3 months after we finished, like for good this time, we meet up because I had a letter for him of, essentially just thank you and I'm sorry. And it was a very heartfelt note. I put a lot of thought into it, and he deserved it. So anyway, I gave it to him, and during this meetup, I find out that he has been pretty much seeing like a girl that I personally know, or like I was never close with her, but we were all part of the same dance class. And so that was December 1st. I remember, I'm pretty sure it was December 1st that we met. And as the days went by, that sunk in. And at first, I genuinely thought like, oh, I noticed, like, I felt peace about it. I didn't feel like upset. I felt like I was genuinely almost like, I don't know if it's the right word, but detached. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, well, good luck. And I don't know if I said good luck, but I was like, wow. And then as the days went on, it sunk in and it started to just wreak havoc in me. And I remember there was this one guy that I had met about a month, or I don't know, a few weeks before I had met up on December 1st with my ex. And this guy that I had met, he had been messaging me, wanting to hang out. And sorry, someone's just calling me, but I will deal with that later. Yeah, he'd be messaging me to hang out, and I remember thinking like, I don't know, meh. But then once December 1st came around, I remember feeling, or once the days ensued after December 1st, I remember feeling, especially on the weekend of, so like this December 3rd, 4th, I remember feeling like, you know what, I need to, the way I'm going to deal with this is by just distracting myself, getting out there, socializing, and pretty much on the day that I decided that, or the day right after, this guy that I had met in November messages me and tells me, or asks me if I'm down for going ice skating. And normally I would say no. But just because I had decided that this is something I need, I was like, yes, let's do it. So we met, and it was such a good way to it was such an effective band-aid. Like, golly. Pretty much that day that we met, we had a great time. And it was just like, boom, now I had this other guy in my mind. And I will say that we did smoke a lot of weed together, and, there was that deceptive element, pretty sure, that was telling me, oh, what if this guy is, the one I'm going to fall in love with? And I mean, looking back now, I think it was deceptive because it was very like, I really thought like, ooh, this is good. Yeah, it felt very genuine. But now, a few months, I think we were like hanging out for about 5-months. So by the end of that 5 months, it was like, okay, well, no, we went our separate ways. He was visiting, he was here on a one-way ticket, and was, just, he had a visa. Oh, no, I guess it was a two-way ticket, but he was looking to maybe extend the flight back, something like that. But he was here on a visa anyway from overseas. And yeah, so essentially, during the time that I'm hanging out with this guy, so we parted ways end of May, early June, because he flew back to his country. But a few months prior to that, so like the January and even the December, when I started hanging out with him at first, I started, people started saying that, why don't you like take some time off and heal? Because the breakup with my ex, like, it was really, like, when I found out about this other girl in his life, that was when it just crushed me. And I would break down crying like this at the drop of a pin, or a penny, I don't know what the expression is. At the drop of a penny. I would just be at work. And I was in customer service at the time, and right in front of the customers, I would just tear up, and I would have to look down and just, not really make eye contact because I would be crying. And then I would just go to the bathroom and then just like, boo. Like, I remember just curling up by the wall and just like, crying. Just like, and, just going to the deli to get some water, and just getting water, and someone asking me how I'm doing, and I was like, bah! crying for like, I think I once cried for a good, like, I don't know, 7 minutes timed. And my kind coworker was just hugging me while I was crying. It was very lovely of him. Shout out to Nick. So anyway, yeah, so some of my pals, saw that I was going through this. Some of my Christian, like in my Christian life group. And so they were saying, Nat, why don't you take some time? Um, they were speaking from their experience, saying that they took a year off and, just dedicate that time to the Lord and relationship with the Lord and just, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I could, but no, because I think I also wasn't really down for that because of this guy, this guy that was just visiting for a few months. He's Lithuanian, so I'm just gonna say it so it's a bit clearer for you guys to understand. Yeah, so I was already hanging out with a Lithuanian, and with all this like weed smoking and hanging out and having a good time, I was thinking, no, like I'm a sucker for romance, and I just really, really just ugh. So I'm pretty sure that's why I didn't want to take a year off at this point. Um, and then people keep telling me here and there, like, why don't you take some time off? And I was like, nah. And then there was a friend in my life, like, she was a bosom buddy before, and then because of definitely my brokenness, that ended that like lovely friendship. And sorry, I'm just thinking how I guess I'm just thinking like what life could have been like if certain spirits I wouldn't allow it to control me so much and end these beautiful friendships that I felt that I got filled by. The Lord help me. Anyway, so this former bosom friend, she had moved away. She had a whole different life now, and we had, I guess, in a civil way, parted ways, and we prayed for each other. Left in the hands of God. And I get this email from her. I remember it was May 2022. And she emails me, and all she sends, I think at this point, I mean, I don't know how long we hadn't spoken for. It hadn't been like years, maybe just months, but still. She just sends a link, like nothing else. And then later on, she sends a follow-up email being like, hey, I hope, explaining that I hope I don't get offended by this link that she's sending, but that, maybe I should consider taking a year off and just for the Lord and not dating. So I'm guessing she heard it through a mutual friend, like, just updating her of how I was doing. But anyway, the point is, by the time she sent this email, I was like, okay, I took it as a confirmation from the Lord, thinking that I'm gonna do it. Like I'm gonna take a year off. Because like I said, people had already been saying that, and I was feeling, I guess, probably, it's hard to recall really right now, but I think there was an aspect of me that was in agreement with that notion of taking a year off. So anyway, so when this pal sends me that email, I was like, okay, let's do it. So that was May 2022. End of May, something like that. And so then, the guys that I met there onwards, I didn't allow my thoughts to drift into thinking, ooh, could this be the one? Because that really was a torment thought. Because when you're living constantly with your antennae out, thinking, "Ooh, this guy might be the one," and then literally 5 minutes later, "Ooh, this guy might be the one," and then a few days later, "Oh, how about this guy?" It's just, it can't, like, I don't think it's possible that I'm gonna be with all these people, and I am of the belief that well, I don't know if it's very pertinent to this, but I mean, I'll just say now because I already started it. I am of the belief that, or I tend to incline towards believing that, that the Lord has, like, I believe in soulmates, and I believe that a soulmate is someone like that you just have this deeper connection with. Now, I mean, I know a lot of Christians would say, no, God doesn't really just have one person. He has, he can make things work with multiple people. And I believe that things can work with multiple people, but to what extent can they work, and to what depth of connection can you have? That's, I guess, where I would say the soulmate factor comes in, where a soulmate would be like the deepest of depths, for those two categories of connection and emotion, and I forget what the other thing that I said, but anyway, so I'm just gonna get a sweater. Hold on. Okay, my little snuggie. Anyway, so where was I? Connection. Right. So anyway, when I would like to be consistently having like multiple potential suitors was a torment, in the sense that I was thinking, okay, well, I can't have all of these men, not just at the same time. I mean, obviously I wouldn't do that, but I mean, even as potential suitors, like, to me, I had this mindset of, it's only going to be one best suitor, and how can I have three best suitors at the same time? And then, it's like, okay, well, obviously there's some deception going on here, and even that just felt like, well, I don't know, actually. Maybe I shouldn't comment much on this, because I haven't really explored my experience with that, but suffice it to say that it did have an element of torment. Anyway, so now, as engaging in this 1 year of thinking that, or of maybe meeting people, but not allowing my mind to think that, oh, maybe this person. So that was great. So yeah, time goes, and then I start, there was this guy at church that I had met, I don't even know, I think in 2021, summer of 2021, I think. And I felt that we had this mutual attraction. That's how I sensed it. But it felt just flirty. So I, never really thought anything of it. And then in end of 2022, we're kind of, I don't even remember why we were kind of in touch. I think sometimes I would go smoke weed, and I would be downtown, and or maybe in the summertime. Yeah, I really don't know. But the point is, sometimes I would go to his house because he lived downtown, and if I was high and I felt like I wanted to chill somewhere and I was downtown, then I would contact him. and not necessarily to say, hey, let's smoke, but more to, have a place to chill as I'm like sobering up. And he was always so lovely and like, yeah, come on over. Yeah, very lovely that way, actually. And then like little like that, we started to talk, and like random little messages out of the blue, nothing really consistent. He would invite me out to some Christian events multiple times, but I would always be like, no, I can't, or no, I'm doing this. And that is, yeah, that's a bad pattern. But yeah, and then he ends up inviting me to his birthday, and I don't go. I was thinking of going, but again, I'm trying not to give myself into like any like situation with the guy. Like, I'm trying not to make any guy a priority, or like, oh, I'm invited to his birthday, I should go because this guy might be a potential suitor. I was just trying to play it cool, and I guess it ended up maybe bordering on being disrespectful. I'm not so sure if I should make that judgment call right now, but essentially I was trying to play cool, trying to control myself, not get too excited, or bend over backwards for any guy. Not that going to a party would be bending over backwards, but it just so happened that on the day that he was inviting me to the party, or on the day that the birthday was happening, I had already made plans to meet with a friend that lives in a different city, different province across the country. And that was the day that worked for us to meet. And I was really busy during that time with a family member coming in to visit from abroad. My brother, he got sick, so that was happening. There was a lot of stress with the family, so that was weighing on me. I was working at a daycare, although we were on winter break, so that doesn't really factor in. But I was volunteering at a crisis call center, so I think, and I had been working at a daycare up until the Christmas break. So it just, I remember finding myself in a time by December that I just felt empty, like I had nothing to give. And I just felt like cardboard. And yeah, so I really felt like I guess overwhelmed might be a good word for that. And yeah, so anyway, so this church guy, I'll call him Paul for the purposes of this video. So Paul invites me to the birthday, and so I'm thinking like, okay, well, I wanted to go, because I had this like attraction to him. But I decided on the day of that, I made this plan with my friend. I'm just gonna see how the day goes. I'm not gonna Paul was not a priority for me. I felt like we didn't have the level of friendship where I felt like it would be a priority. Whereas with this visitor friend, we had more of a relationship. So anyway, so I ended up meeting the friend, and it just happened that my brother, who is the visiting family member, he wanted to see this friend from across the country as well. And so then my mom invites everybody over for dinner. And so we're eating dinner, we're playing game and Spanish Scrabble, and so that takes a while. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna go to this birthday party, but I'm not gonna rush the evening, I'm just gonna let the evening flow. We finish at 10. I wasn't close enough to Paul to feel comfortable to be like, hey, is the party still happening? Because it was during a work week, so I didn't know. I was kind of thinking maybe he'll go to work tomorrow, so maybe the party would end early. And I didn't want to call him like past 10 o'clock because for my pride, that kind of felt like it made me look like it was not a booty call, but just like late night call, and like when I don't have much of a relationship with someone, and it for me it was like it felt like there's a lot of flirtation going on, so it just felt a little bit like no, my pride, my ego was like I don't want to have give off a certain image of myself. Was that just like silly thinking? Perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, that's how I felt at the time. So I didn't call. But I had told him I wasn't going to end up going because this friend was visiting and we're still, busy. Anyway, then the days go by and I just got again, up until like, I don't even know, end of January perhaps, or mid-January, when my brother left, and things kind of winded down. Up until then, I was just feeling like, oh my gosh, there's just so much because my brother hadn't visited. This was the second time he was visiting in 10 years. So this was a big deal. So it felt like any free time was going to go to him. Like he was my priority. And I resumed working at the daycare while he was still here. So then that was just like 5 days a week, 3-hour daily commute in total, round trip. Leave the house at 7, get back at 7, and then go get stuff at the dollar store, prepare crafts for the next day, go to the library, do research. I would get about 20 minutes to myself before going to bed, and then like repeating everything. So it was just a lot. And so when my brother left and then things cooled down during that week, I was thinking like, I felt like I didn't feel good about the way, like I probably came off as dismissive to Paul. And so I just wanted to let him know that, and I really was sorry because I did have the intention to go, but I didn't want to force it. And, with his friend and like coming over across the country and with everything, just with family, it was a lot. And I did feel, he was inviting me a few times to things and I just kept turning him down, even though I had told him that I wanted to get more involved in Christian things. It's like he's trying to like help me out, a little bit. And I'm just like, nah. So I end up sending him a voice note, or I think I tried calling him, didn't answer, send him a voice note, and just pretty much just saying, hey, sorry I missed your birthday, like if you're down, or like how was it, and if you're down, I would like to, like, we could meet up and I could like buy you something or treat you to something. And then he didn't answer for a few days, which I took it as like, yeah, I mean, he probably wasn't oh no. So I painted my toenails and I didn't even think about whether they were dry or not for folding my legs, but they're all dry. Yeah, so, I was thinking he, likely, I kind of felt like, not that I deserved for him not to, like, answer sooner, but I understood, it's like, well, I didn't really make him a priority, so why would he make me a priority, kind of a thing. Anyway, then he answers, and I forget what he said, but it was a friendly response. And then, man, now I'm just thinking, like, now as I'm telling all these things, it just kind of gives me some perspective on some matters. Anyway, I end up seeing him at church, and he's always making jokes because I for me, going to church has been a battle because I don't know. I get judgy, and I get like, oh, I don't know, this isn't really working for me, or like, oh, they're a little too soft, or I mean, maybe it's maybe it's wisdom laced with judgy. I don't know, but anyway, I would like, I ended up spending most of my time for a few months for like, or like maybe a year at a home church, which was a life group from this church where Paul is at. But in Paul's eyes, he wasn't aware of that. So like every now and then I would show up to service, like not like the life group home church session, which they met like several times a week on Zoom, and you could show up in person if you wanted to. So I felt like I was getting that feeding, perhaps even more so than I was when I was going to the church, like to the actual like large congregation. But anyway, in Paul's eyes, he's not, I guess, aware of that, and so when he sees me every now and then, he probably has this impression that I'm just floating around, which to an extent I was floating in the sense that I wasn't really surrendered or like to both feet in. But I was definitely, struggling a lot and resisting God a lot, but concerned about that. Did spend a lot of time with like always with my questions about the faith, and always with trying to understand God and wanting to understand God, and it was never like, yeah, okay, bye. Yeah. So anyway, so he makes a comment, like a little sly jokey comment, and then we're chatting, and at one point it was pretty interesting. We were just making small talk, and just small talk, and then it just kind of like dies down. And I have been looking for a place to live. Right. Yeah, so this would be sometime in January, end of January or early February, because I was in transition between homes, and I was now living at my mom's for a little bit, and seeking for a room. And so when he makes this, we're like small talking, and then he stops, and we both stop talking, and there's a moment of just silence, just like a second. And then I had the thought to ask him, hey, do you know of anyone that's looking for a roommate, because I'm looking for a room. But before I can say anything, he says, do you know of anyone who's looking for a room? And I remember, and he's like, because like my roommate is leaving and we're looking for someone to fill it. And I remember this moment being like, that's crazy. Like, what are, like, it just happened like that. And I have to say, like, with Paul, there's just so many similarities, or there's been a lot of moments where, or life events where, like, there's this parallel, not just in our personalities, but also in, or like our character, but also just in, sometimes even like events or dreams. And which I find quite interesting, and that makes me think that, I don't know, it just makes me think that there was something intentional about me ending up needing to know Paul a bit better, in terms of something like divinely intentional. So anyway, so then I end up asking him some questions about the place, but it wasn't ticking off all my boxes. So, I mean, maybe it wasn't God after all. But anyway, but I still kept in my mind. I was like, oh, I'll pass it on to someone if they, if I know of anyone that's looking for a place. He's like, okay. But at this point, I don't know if I told him I was looking for a place, or did I? No, I did, because I asked him all these questions, and I told him, yeah, I was looking for a place, but like the price is like, yeah, out of my budget. Anyway, and so yeah. Then that day, we end up meeting for, like, later on after church, we end up meeting for like a quick hot chocolate, which again, I was like, okay, let's meet up. And it was very quick because my mom, before I made plans with him, my mom asked me if I would be home for dinner, and I said yes. And then Paul and I made plans. So I felt like, okay, well, I'm not going to, again, bend over backwards to change my plan with my mom. I'm going to honor that. And this other plan with Paul is going to have to just work somehow. And which, yeah. But anyway, so we just met for like 40 minutes, a little hot chocolate, a quick chat. And then he drove me home, which he often did and does, which is again lovely of him. And anyway, so we end up hanging out, and then I go home. And then I think it's the next weekend. And there was one Saturday morning, that I just woke up. Or was it that weekend? I don't remember now. But anyway, back quickly to this roommate thing. As time went on, I remember thinking, you know what, maybe like, I remember thinking like, oh, because I ended up getting a job interview at a daycare, like very close by. And, I was just thinking it'd be nice, like very close by to Paul's place. And that was also close to my mom's place, and close to other, the place where I was volunteering, and place where I was thinking of going to dance schools. I was thinking, shucks, maybe I should have taken that opportunity, and maybe I could do it actually on second thought. And I was thinking, you know what? Like, hey, you never know. Maybe things didn't work out with the roommate that they got, and the roommate's gonna leave by the end of the month, and maybe I could take it then. I thought of it as like maybe like a 30% chance, but a chance nonetheless. So I ended up meeting him at one point, and I just asked him like, hey, how's the new roommate? And just asking. And also with that 30% chance of like, I'm curious. And he's like, oh, actually, he's gonna leave because it's not working out. And I was like, wow, like, what are the chances? And so anyway, I end up like checking out the place and measuring it properly, thinking that like I had things in storage, and realistically with my budget, I wanted to, wherever I moved to, I wanted to move all my things out of the storage into the place, so that I'm not paying rent for a room and storage, but just a room. Or like keep the storage but then pay for a much cheaper room. But prices have gone up, so yeah, anyway, so the price that was given to me, and considering the room, I did the measurements, I was thinking I'm still gonna have to put my things in. So I'm gonna have to just keep my storage, which means it would be storage plus this place, and like that's just, I think, like $200 or so above my budget, which adds up. So I was like, I decided no. Then one Saturday, I wake up and I'm just thinking like, I just feel kind of restless, and it's kind of nice outside. I'm like, I look outside the window and I'm like, I want to go for a hike today. And then I turn on my phone and I have a missed call from Paul and a message, and he's asking if I want to go on a hike. And I'm like, hey, I was just having that desire. And, then he picks me up and we go. And on this hike, I'm already, like I said, I've already had this attraction to him for a while. And mind you, the attraction, like the nature of it, I'm still not sure. Is it like lust, or is there something more authentic? Is it authentic, or is it authentically lust? But anyway, so we're on this hike, and when I had gone to take the measurements of the room, he had asked me some questions, like, or even before that, when I mentioned, because before I measured the room, it was when I found out the roommate, they were gonna find a new roommate. So then I just asked him, he was asking me questions, kind of like interview questions to see what I'm like as a roommate. And then we set up a time for me to go check the room. We had to go tell that current roommate, like what are some good days and times for your room to be checked out. So anyway, so when he was asking me questions, I remember he was asking me he's like, so like, do you bring a lot of guys over? But he said it in a way that made me think it wasn't so much like, so like, do you bring guys over? It was more like, you bring a lot of guys, right? And I remember thinking, like, in that moment, like, it caught me off guard, but it was later that it started sinking in, and I was like, how does he see me? Like, does he think I'm just like hooking up with a lot of guys? Like, no, even if I'm not taking a year off, like, no. And so that stuck with me. And then, because I had this attraction to him, it was kind of bothering me, because I'm thinking, like, I don't want this guy to see me like that if I'm attracted to him. So on this hike, we do this walk, and then at the end of it, I asked him, like, how do you see me? And he answered all these things, and it like, he answered how he saw me, but it wasn't directly in the sense of, like, I just open-ended question, although I wanted to know more, like, does he see me as someone who likes to, have a lot of sexual encounters and flings with men? That was what I wanted to know, but I didn't specify that. I just said, how do you see me? And so he listed up some, like, character traits and negative ones, and the way he expressed it, he's quite the animated fellow, so he was quite expressive about it. And I was like sinking and like, yikes. Like, okay, well, he, like, given the things he just said and the way he said it, probably he has, like, no interest in me. So then I told him, I was like, okay, Paul, so I gotta tell you something. And I told him that I like him, and that hearing how he has just spoken about me, it's telling me that he does not feel that same way. And so out of me protecting myself, I'm just gonna keep a bit of a distance from him. Which later on he told me, he asked me whether I was using that to manipulate him, but, like, not at all. Like, and this is an emotional immaturity that I currently am dealing with, and it's this, it comes from a fear of, well, I think I hope to really understand this soon, but I think it comes from a fear of rejection. And I just get very sensitive to rejection, and to an unhealthy extent. And So I just, knowing me, I was like, I need to protect myself, and perhaps I should stop protecting myself so that I can just face it, get that hurt, and like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So then I can mature. But anyway, in this moment, I was just being authentic, and I was, being like, oh gosh, like, if I keep hanging out with him and thinking that now he like looks maybe down on me, and hearing about him meeting other girls, I'm just not gonna feel great. So I just wanted to let him know that if I seem distant, it's not because I'm doing it out of dismissiveness, or like, like I couldn't, like, almost like he's just like whatever to me. It was more just because I'm like, oof, like, yeah, I don't want to feel rejected. So, and like I'm not good enough, because I'll get into this cycle where I'm just like, oh, I want to be good enough for this person, but I'm not, and then it just kind of, this condemnation comes in, and it's just not a pleasant experience at all. Very unhealthy. So I was just informing him. I didn't think I had to inform him, but I just really want him to know. One thing I don't like is for people to misunderstand me, and in the way of thinking that I don't care when I do. So yeah, so I just told him that, and then he's like, oh, so but why do we have to like stop talking? And I'm like, well, I just told you, because I I don't know. I think that's maybe when I told him, because I like you. And then he just gives me this hug, and he's like, I like you too. I'm like, but you just said these things. Like, anyway, so that's how it started. Paul. And so then we just thought, okay, let's get to know each other. Now, my idea of getting to know each other was more like, let's start slow. Let's talk more and like hang out, form a friendship ideally. I don't know if I would be capable of that, of taking it that slow, knowing that both people have interest in each other. But that was what I was thinking. But Paul he like went straight to touchy, and he was just like hugging me a lot. And I remember, like, on that first day he was hugging me a lot, like not all the time, but like maybe like 3 to 5 times in the span of a few hours. And like tight and long hugs. And I remember just feeling like stiff, and feeling like for some reason I was blocked. Was it because it was just like a shock? Was it because I didn't really like him and I was being misled by myself? Or was I just being reserved and like just like open to the idea, but not that open, like, because I like him, but not that much yet. I don't know, but I definitely felt like a cardboard. Was I nervous? Was I scared of repeating patterns from the past where like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, where I get excited about like being around someone more for what I get from it. So like just me being by nature like this, like, lovey-dovey and personality, and I like the attention, and then that ends up misleading the other person into thinking that I'm really into them when really I'm more into the fact that I'm having this moment rather than me being into them specifically. So anyway, like, I don't really know why I was stiff, but I was stiff. And I definitely wasn't expecting things, and I didn't want things to go that fast, but I also tend to not really voice my opinions, and I'll just often take the lead of the guy, and this feeling of me wanting to satisfy them and please them comes in, and not wanting it to be awkward by me saying no, or I just get, sometimes I feel like I'm lost, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna go follow their lead. So anyway, and then from there on, we ended up, I mean, as the days progressed, as our hangouts progressed, we just ended up getting physical fast. I mean, fast in my Christian worldview. And yeah. And now I got to the point where I always get to this point, or it feels like I always get to the point where I'm in a situation ship, if that's what they call it, where I was feeling like, okay, what are my intentions here? And just really not wanting I really don't want to be in a relationship where, or in a situation where, I I want to be on the same page as someone. I want to really look at this person and be so proud to be by this specific person, and feeling that there's just no one else that I have eyes for, because I have felt like that before. I mean, it was short-lived, but it is a feeling that I think is not like unreasonable to ask for. And I think both parties deserve the same. A lot of people say that often in relationships. Well, I don't know how many people say it, but I've heard it a few times that in relationships, there's always going to be one person who's a bit more committed or more into it than the other. Sure, I mean, if that's a fact, then I pray that I would really know that, so that I wouldn't have like these super high standards and freak out if I don't meet them, when in fact it's totally okay if they're not met. Um, but I do think that there should be, I mean, I think I would want both parties to feel content with each other, and not just like, oh yeah, I'll just take this, but more than that, like, I'm glad to be with this person. And I like, when you look at love and how the Christian faith defines love, how the Bible defines love, it talks about, at least in the Amplified Version, that it's an unselfish concern for the welfare of somebody else. So putting the interests of others before yours. And that's the kind of love that I would like to have in a relationship, where I feel that like I care for the well-being of this person. And if I'm being selfish, then, like, if I'm with someone because I am meeting my need of just feeling affection and attention, then I feel like I'm using the person. And it seems I just get into this headspace where it just feels so wrong, and I feel so guilty, because if I feel like I'm manipulating, and like I'm lying, and I'm being deceptive, and to what extent are those thoughts really horrible? Like now I'm just wondering as I'm sharing this, like is there some extent of, how can I say, like to want affection and attention, I mean, it's normal. But now I'm wondering to what extent is it healthy? And at what point does it become genuinely like malicious? Or to what extent, at what point does it become malicious? And something that it's like, okay, that's just not good that you're thinking that way or feeling that way. So these are all things I have now, and perhaps maybe I demonize too many things, or maybe I really do have these deep-seated needs of affection and attention, which in and of themselves are normal and understandable, but to the point that you bring it into a relationship and expect it from your partner, like to what point is that at? Then this is, yeah, like I don't know. Like I really pray to know like how, like if I'm being malicious, and if so, to what extent? Like how am I being malicious? Because in my little mind, I tend to, again, like I said in the beginning of this, I worry that it, like my mind tends to believe that most likely I am being malicious. And that torments me because I feel like I'm being super unfair to this other person, and like I'm hiding something horrible from this person. And then I just start thinking, you know what? You need to stay away from me because you I'm just like, there's some new thoughts going through my mind as I've been speaking out loud. I've been getting a little bit of new perspective on some things, so I'm just a little still in there thinking, so I'm a little distracted at the moment. But how was I saying? I don't remember now. Oh yeah, I tend to think that this person, like, okay, you need to stay away. It's the safest for you because God forbid, I mean that literally, I would pray that God would never, that the situation would never be that the guy like falls in love and now I'm just manipulating them and reeling them in deeper and deeper, and then things end and they're just in a horrible place. And I just feel like I just caused so much pain onto someone. And with my previous relationship, like the one that lasted on and off for 2 years, I don't know, like it was a weird relationship in the sense that for a long time, for the majority of those 2 years, and probably I'll just say for those 2 years, minus those 3 official months, we were like, I was telling him all of this. I was like, I just don't know, like, yeah, pretty much, like, just my, like, I don't know if I'm in it for the right reason, all these things, and it was back and forth for me, not for him. He was very much like, I want to be with you. I was like, I don't know. And I like with him, he wanted to marry me. He like loved me, and I do think that although I don't think it was God's will for us to be, married, I do think that God used him as a vessel of love because he loved me. I felt that for the most part, he saw me. And I was just myself around him. I was very authentic. And he just loved it. And he saw my flaws. And he acknowledged my flaws. And he challenged me to grow up from the flaws. But he never rejected me because of the flaws. And he wanted to help me. And so... yeah. So anyway, with him, it was, yeah, I felt that he loved me, and I do think there may have been some manipulation going on there. Not intentional. It's never intentional in the sense of where I'm like, ooh, I just want to like manipulate this person, or like if I manipulate them, then I'm going to get this. No, I do believe it came from a place of brokenness, which after this experience with Paul, I'm just like, I don't want to go through this again. Like, I don't want to find myself questioning my motives again. Like, it's a painful place to be, and for both parties. And now I'm just like, you know what? No, this has to be dealt with. So like, no more. And I want to get to the root of why am I acting these ways? Is there a void I'm filling? And if so, what is it? And can we fill it with the right thing? The right fill? Are there some... I mean, that's what I tend to think. But now as I've been talking, I'm also thinking, are there some mistaken beliefs I hold of like, maybe I shouldn't be feeling, like, maybe I shouldn't be feeling guilty. Maybe I shouldn't, or like maybe it's not as malicious as I think it is in my head. Like, maybe it's common for people. Maybe I experienced something that's common, and the difference is that I'm making it this huge thing. Or maybe it is a huge thing, and most people don't make it a huge thing because they're not driven to be unselfish. Or to strive towards unselfishness. Like, yeah. So anyway, it's something that I really hope to figure out, and yeah, I really pray that I don't end up being with someone for the wrong reasons. Like, just for selfish reasons. I also pray that I have self-respect and a sense of worth and value, so that I detect warning signs and am courageous to like stand up against it, and not just like, oh, I see a sign, a warning sign, but like I'm too timid to like assert my expectations or demands, and not in like a whippy kind of way, but just in like a self-respect sort of way. So yeah, um, that is that. And yeah, that is that. And I thank God that, and I know that Paul is also grateful that this, or at least he said he was, well, he didn't say grateful, but I mean, we both acknowledge that at least we haven't been seeing each other for too long. I think it's been about a month and a half, just shy of 2 months seeing each other. We never had that full on, okay, we're an item, in terms of like presenting ourselves to the world, and talking about certain expectations or desires for the dynamic of a relationship. For example, like setting aside certain days of the week to hang out or talking more. At least I felt like we never really, we were always just kind of getting to know each other. But even that, I felt like shy, because he made some comments and I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know if you're really gonna accept me if I really show myself, not just my bad self, which I really think wouldn't go down well with him, but, well, I don't think it would. I mean, maybe he would be forgiven, I don't know, but forgiving. But I mean more like certain comments. Like I remember one time he's like, you're kind of hippie, right? You came from like a hippie background. And like there's a lot of things in the hippie mindset that I value and that I fundamentally believe in or agree with. But did I have a phase where it was like this typical hippie, like Hollywood, the way Hollywood paints it? No. There's just some inclinations. And I remember he like asked me that once recently. He's like, you're kind of hippie? And I just said, yeah, I have some tendencies. And he was like, yeah. And then he expressed something that once I did something that he found weird. And it was something like he couldn't remember, but it was just something, I don't even know what it was, but maybe I was barefoot, or maybe I asked a very open question. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that, something that to me, I'm just like, well, what's wrong with that? I remember once I asked his roommate, the roommate was like leaving the apartment like at 10, and with a bag, and I think I was just like, where are you going? Like curiosity, like at this hour, like where are you going? I think it was like a Sunday night, and he was going to the gym or something like that. But anyway, it was like me asking that question later on when the roommate left. Paul was like, hey, like, why'd you ask that? You don't ask somebody that. And in my mind, I'm like, there's nothing weird about that to me. I tend to, as closed off as I am in relationships, in terms of superficial relationships, I'm very open. And I like it when people are open with me. It shows comfort. It shows, that you're just chill, and that's the environment I like to be in. So if someone asks me like, hey, where are you going at 10? Like, and they're just curious, like I have no problem with that. Like, I'll tell you, and you can ask me something else too while you're at it. Like, let's have a talk here. Yeah, like I was, well, I guess I still kind of am, but I volunteer at the crisis call center. I I'm comfortable with people opening up to me, even not just about what they're doing at 10 p.m., but like their emotions, something that's hard for them to talk about. Like, hey, if you need to talk to someone about something, I'm here. I like, my ears are pretty open and my mind is quite open as well. Like, I do make it a practice to do away with judgment, you know? Like, I always consider that there's multiple sides to a situation. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, he was saying stuff like that, you know, and I was just like, oh, I don't know, like, maybe he's gonna find me weird if he gets to know me, because I don't think I'm weird, but I've been told multiple times that I'm different, and which I don't think is a bad thing. It's just, I'm just different. Anyway, so that is essentially where I'm at. And now I am, you know, I'm really feeling this week that the Lord is calling me to, like, stirring up in me this, not just desire, but the willpower. My goodness, I have prayed for that for a while. And while I'm still, the emotions are still like, oh, it's going to be really hard to surrender to God, I'm sensing more of this willingness to say, okay, I'm going to try, even if my emotions might take a while to catch up with that decision. Like, I really want to try. I want to grow. I feel like the Lord is calling me to be more dove-eyed and to just really push on to win that race and have that self-control and have that discipline. And yeah, and Paul and I, because of us, you know, we were quite sexual, and I was feeling like, okay, well, I don't love him, so technically us being horny, like engaging in the activities, is probably lust based. Like, ideally I would like to be doing those things with someone I love. Now, am I being an idealist? Is my idealism realistic in the eyes of God? Like, is that what God wants us to think? Or is God gonna be like, yeah, Natalie, I mean, that's the ideal, but, you know, like, it's really not a problem. I tend to think that the idealist mindset is actually what God has designed us to do and to be like. But if that's not the case, then I obviously pray that God would clear that up for me so that I could, like, that would do away with quite a lot of the concerns and the anxieties, because as much as I think, like, I'm concerned about doing things right, or I shouldn't quote it, but as much as I'm concerned about doing things God's way, I also tend to consistently stray away from that way, because my flesh, when I want something, I want it and I get it, in terms of sensual, like, pleasures. Even if half a second before I'm like, I really shouldn't do it, and I have this conviction of, like, I'm not gonna do it. I know I'm not gonna do it, and then half a second later, it's like I'm eating whatever thing that I really think I shouldn't be doing, or I'm doing that thing, or, you know, or I'm smoking that thing that I really just said I shouldn't. I really felt that I was in alignment with myself that I shouldn't do it, and then I just do it. So yeah, so anyway, with Paul and I, we were just like, I kept saying, I think we shouldn't be doing this, and I kept on reasoning my way through it and reading scripture and feeling like I was getting a sense that God was telling me to stop doing it because this is what God's ways are. And love for one another and being concerned for one another. And if I don't really care about you, then should I be doing these physical things with you? And if it's just selfish, am I not doing you a disrespectful disservice? And all those things were going through my mind. And so I just kept thinking, no, I shouldn't be doing this, but we kept doing it. And I kept telling him that, and he has a different, what seems, I don't know actually, but he would listen to me and then be like, okay, sure, Nat. And then like a few seconds later, we would just like be at it. And it happened so like all the time. Like we would have these conversations and then boom, it was like nothing happened. So it got to the point where I was thinking, I'll have to charge my phone soon, where I was thinking that like, okay, well, are we gonna be able to actually like keep our hands off each other? We're like, I started seeing it as like we were causing each other to stumble. And I really believe that God is like, I know God is calling him higher, and I know God is calling me higher, and I know that God loves us both dearly. So it was a shock for me to consider like, can two like chosen humans cause each other to stumble? Like I usually think like whoever, like one person is, kind of evil if they're causing the other person to stumble. But I'm like, yeah, but we're both like, I really do sense the grace of God, or not the grace, the God's favor on both of us. And it just it just really, I started to see myself as like, or in that case, it's easy to think that one person is like, yeah, kind of evil, because how could two chosen ones do that to one another, kind of a thing. So anyway, and when I say chosen ones, I mean like, a child of God who has that divine favor and who is definitely being called higher. That's what I mean by chosen one. Anyway, so yeah, that was kind of a shocking sentiment, a very shocking sentiment actually. And so anyway, so then I was thinking, yeah, like if I was thinking that I'm losing my train of thought here. I was thinking that I'm being called higher, and I think that part of that higherness is to walk in the paths of righteousness, and that would mean following what the Bible says, even the New Testament, of not giving way to sexual impurity. And I'm thinking, Paul and I, we're not married. We are, I guess we're not even committed to each other. I mean, like, as official boyfriend, girlfriend. We don't love each other, like, with God's love, because I think I mean, I didn't love him, and I don't believe that he really cared about like he was able to really care for my heart. And that made me question whether he, like, what his intentions were with me, which I don't know. Um so yeah, so I was thinking, if we don't really love each other and we keep doing what we're doing, then like we're not doing God's will. And if we're not doing God's will, we're not walking in his light, in his path. And I want to grow, which means I have to walk in his path. So and also, like, because I believe he's being called higher, it just made me sad to think like I'm a stumbling block to him. Like, I know better, I'm like, no, like I want to be someone who can motivate other people and be a safe space for someone, and I'm causing someone to stumble and just in their growth, which I know God is calling them to. It just felt like, hold up, something. No, 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 no. Like, Natalie, this is Amir. Natalie, like, you know better. You know better. Not in a condemning way, but in like a convicting way. And, some pride of like, you know better. But I think like a healthy pride. Says me, but yeah, so for those reasons, I thought we need to stop what we're doing. And I gotta get my motivation straight here, obviously, because I don't like it's horrible to not to be it's horrible to feel ambivalent in a relationship, and it's not fair for them. It's also like not enjoyable for me. And the other person deserves, every single person deserves to have their value seen and acknowledged. Every single human deserves to feel and be valued. So yeah, so I was just thinking like, okay, no, this is not, like, I need some time and space to figure this out, because it just feels messy. Feels messy. Like, what are my intentions? I'm not valuing you right. Like, do I have a void? Just all these questions. And then he wanted to stay with me, walk with me during my healing, because I signed up for a healing session to try and get to the bottom of this. Or at the very least, get that ball rolling. And by faith, I say get the bottom of this, because I want to get to the bottom of this. But yeah, he wanted to stick by me. He said, yeah, like, he'll stick by me. He'll pray for me along the way, be there to give me hugs. But then I'm thinking, like, okay. But then we would meet up a few times, and it always goes back to the same thing, and we're acting like we're together. And then I'm thinking, yeah, but I can't, as long as I keep on being with him like that, like in a romantic way, I'm not going to be able to really figure out my intentions. I felt like I just needed space, clean space around me. Like, not messy, just clear, clean space to figure it out. And yeah. Yeah. Oh, so sleepy. And I really pray that this, yeah. Anyway, I won't get into my prayer request, but yeah. I hope that anyway, yeah, so this is the first video to explain that. And